All right, welcome everyone to another episode of Behind the Human. My name is Mark Champagne and I'm your host, and it's my job to unpack the stories and mental fitness practices of people living at the top of their game personally and professionally. Today we have Brad Wells on the show, who is a serial entrepreneur who found profound personal transformation through plant medicine. This led him to sell his company, come out, end his 25-year marriage, and now, driven by purpose over profit, he founded Reunion, a nonprofit plant medicine retreat center in Costa Rica, where he's joining us today, dedicated to providing opportunities for personal growth, self-acceptance, and healing. Brad, of course, left out a ton of detail in that short little description, but that's why you're here to fill in some of the gaps. Welcome to the show. If you strip away the job titles and all of that and what you do today, who are you?
Yeah. I would just say there's a quote that really resonates. We're all just walking each other home, which is a quote by Ram Dass, right? And I love it because it really speaks to the simplicity of life. So I would say that who I am, I'm just a fellow person, on this journey, and enjoying it more than I ever have. So walking home with the other people, the rest of us.
What does home signify to you today?
Well, ultimately, I think the quote reflects to hope being, home being the life hereafter, right? But to me, that quote on a regular basis just means home to me, home to who I am, home to be, free of so many of the stories that I've been told, from society, from my parents, from life. And I really think increasingly free from so many of those stories I told myself about me. And most of those stories were not positive stories. I find that's often what we do is pick up on the things that aren't the most positive about us and dwell on that. So who I am on a daily basis, I'm just really enjoying life at a level I never did before.
And who were you prior to? It seems like there was, there were probably many moments, but it seems like there were definitely one pretty significant moment with, I think, plant medicine that did something, led to a lot of big life changes and directions and so forth. But I'm curious, before we get into that story, which I think links really well, obviously, to Reunion and all the work that you put energy towards today, I'm curious to understand a little bit about who the person was prior. How would you describe that version of Brad?
Yeah. Well, I always would have described myself as an entrepreneur, as a business leader, really driven to grow an organization, hardworking. I certainly would have been referred to by friends and people I worked with as driven, and really trying to create a successful organization. And I had numerous companies that I was able to either buy and grow, mostly, start and really, really take to a significant level. And I found a lot of my self-worth was wrapped up in that. And I just assumed that that's what it was all about. You work hard, you have a level of business success, financial success, which then validates who we are. Right.
Yeah.
And I was kind of surprised that it didn't, it didn't prove my self-worth to me.
Yeah. How did that show up for you? Like, what were the signs that were like, something missing here?
Well, it's just, when you sit back and go, Sunday's a great day because no one else is in the office and I can get so much done and I can get, just ready for the week. And, you walk home or you come home at 6 or 7 o'clock at night and you're just like, I had an amazing day, and it was all about getting stuff done. So my most amazing days were the days where I was the most productive, where the most was accomplished, the most was moved forward. It usually moved forward from a business perspective, seldom moved forward from a personal life perspective.
Okay. So just for perspective, like what kind of timelines are we talking? How many years or decades were you in what seemed like, it seems like you're very, very successful in the business world, which almost makes it harder, I think, probably, right? Like you're on the autopilot of that track. And then like how much time passed, I guess?
Well, I'm 58 now.
Okay.
And we had the first time doing plant medicine, doing ayahuasca was about 6 years ago, right?
Okay.
Where I started to see some of the stories or understand better some of the stories I had been telling myself about me. A lot of that being that meaning comes from being productive. Meaning comes from growing a successful organization, a successful company. Self-worth being tied in very closely into that.
Yeah.
And, that's what society oftentimes can be about,
Yeah.
not everyone, but that was a driver in my life. Like, the drive to succeed, the drive. It wasn't really, Mark, as much about the money, because I always believed that if you did things correctly in the organization, that the financial piece would follow. But it was a constant drive to, for me, for achievement, to take things to the next level, to improve things, to fix things.
Yeah.
If I spent any time on myself, it was often from the perspective of I needed to fix. There were things about me that were broken, and so I was very much into a lot of the self-help books, and just a lot of it was CDs at the time, just a lot of the self-help
Tony
CDs.
Robbins tracks and all that.
Yeah, all that, stuff. The Zig Ziglars, going back.
John Collins.
Yeah, exactly. All of those. So I was very heavily involved in trying to fix me and trying to, move the organizations that I was involved in forward. And I think you get a lot of validation when a company is successful. You get a lot of validation when you're referred to as driven, right? Yeah. And, that just kind of led to this continual more. Okay? Yeah. Until I had the realization in ayahuasca, really it was just the realization of, first of all, what I was even doing.
Okay.
Right?
How did you even get to that point?
Well, how did I end up doing ayahuasca?
Yeah.
So quite unexpectedly. So and most of the time Canadians go to the US. It's an optioned holiday destination point. I had kind of reached the number of days that I could go to the US, and a friend of mine said, well, there's a place in Costa Rica. They do, organic food and meditation and movement and just a beautiful climate. And I'm like, yeah, I really need a break. I was just burnt.
Okay.
And they said, and they do ayahuasca. And I said, well, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not doing drugs. Okay. But the rest of it sounds good. And 2 weeks later, I was there. And my very first text back to that friend was, WTF, this is an ayahuasca center. Like, the food is the food is to support the ayahuasca, the movement. All of this is to support, an ayahuasca journey. And I was not too happy. But
Yeah.
And so I wasn't going to partake. And I'm there. It's Monday night. The first ceremony's on a Monday night. So I went into ceremony, and I think it was one of the hardest nights of my life. Swore I would never do it again. And then Tuesday, I woke up realizing I had really a lot of insights.
Okay.
Saw things with a different level of clarity that I hadn't seen before. So I went back another night, and went another night.
Okay.
And they were tough. But what kind of caught me is the next text I had sent to that same friend was, thank you for being my friend. Because I had, just after 3 ceremonies, such a profound shift in myself and with the other people that were there. So it wasn't just my own experience that had really been deep and somewhat transformative. It had been the same for the other guests that were there.
Okay. I know everyone has their own experiences, but I mean, just for people that have never experienced something like this, and myself included, like what did your experience feel like?
Well, I was fearful at first.
Yeah.
I grew up very religious in a very dogmatic religious upbringing that something like this was not right. I was a cult. I wasn't going to be safe. What was I doing in Central America? Doing ayahuasca, some, jungle ritual. So a lot of stories. It's one of the things we try to do here at Reunion is explain to people before they go into that first ceremony. You're safe. You're not gonna be physically unharmed in any way.
There's a lot of propaganda and news that also has come out that is just purely fabricated stuff, right? When you start
Yeah.
to really like
When we
dig
really dig
into
into
the
it.
history.
Well, I think a lot of it's fabricated because we oftentimes go into these experiences with a lot of those fears and then it
Yeah.
just built on, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it was just, I saw things different. Like instead of, telling myself I'm a driven entrepreneur, I had an insight into, wow, I'm really trying to prove my own self-worth
Mm.
by how hard I'm working. And do I really want to spend my whole life doing that? And it had never dawned on what the driving force was. I
Okay.
just knew that I was driven
Yeah.
and complimented on my drops. This idea of the work ethic, get up early and get to work late, get up and do it again. I had never questioned that. I had never realized even what was causing some until my experience with ayahuasca.
Okay. Yeah, and why would you question it? Like you said, you're being validated and we're surrounded by having that driven and productivity, I almost want to say badges of honor, right?
Yeah,
That there's essentially no reason to question it. Like, why would you?
this is life. This is
Yeah.
a successful life, right? So never did I have an awareness of where this was coming from.
Okay.
So I never, what I would say, Mark, is I never chose that for me. It was
Yeah.
something I was acting upon, not being aware of why.
Okay. So you go through the ayahuasca experience. How do you feel coming out of that?
Um, like there was a lot to take in.
Yeah.
There were some ideas of like just wow, like this. I got to sit with this. There was really the idea that I guess maybe one of possibility, like more certainly aware that I could make some choices in my life to live what I would now refer to as more consciously, not consciously from the standpoint of some kind of spiritual consciousness, just more the decisions I make, why I'm making those decisions. And do I want to make those decisions based on those reasons? So I could more consciously make choices for the life that I want.
Yeah.
So did I want to be driven by a deep-seated fear of not being worthy? Not what I know, like that's kind of a clear
Yeah.
answer, but I had just never asked the question.
Okay.
Did I want to be driven by fear? And my answer to that was no, I don't want to be driven by fear. Didn't mean I still didn't want to be successful and have drive. I just wanted to more clearly be aware of the decisions I was making, the reason for it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it seems like being driven, it's not like you're taking that away from your personality, but you're redirecting it in a more intentional or clear way.
Yeah, just understanding, why am I so driven? Why do I need this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do I want to spend my life with this?
Yeah.
The bigger question becomes, is this how I want to spend the rest of my life? And a lot of things that came up, the answers were no, this is not how I want to spend the rest of my life. This is not how I want to be.
So as someone who studies and collects questions and gets asked a lot of questions about questions, when I write down, I just wrote that down, is this how I want to spend the rest of my life? That could be a terrifying question for most, and especially, and it can be a heavy question depending on how you kind of set it up or frame it. For you, coming out of that experience with, it feels like it'd be a bit terrifying. Like you've got a bunch of new insight, probably some clarity around like, okay, well, that's probably why I felt a little off here, and here, which maybe was refreshing in some capacity. But I imagine you left there with some pretty big decisions to make.
Yeah, I did. And I didn't feel like I needed to go out and immediately make decisions because I was really sitting with the whole, understanding of the decisions I was making, what was driving those decisions. Right. And I think what started to be made known to me in the medicine is that so many of my decisions I was making unconsciously.
Okay.
And that the opportunity to make decisions with more awareness, which then leads to obviously a more conscious life. But I didn't put all those pieces together.
Okay.
So I became more aware of what was driving me, what was creating these behaviors, and the hard work ethic, the why behind it.
Got you.
I think it didn't create as many questions, Mark, as it started to answer some of them.
Sure. Okay. So what did you do next? Like how, because they're from my understanding of your life prior to that experience is very different in many ways, from your business to your relationship. I mean, these are like massive life buckets, let's just say. I'm just curious how you got from that ceremony where, you're kind of, I don't want to say tricked, but you surprised, let's just say, when on day one or the day prior to ceremony, to literally leading and running a beautiful and well recognized and reputable facility and spot in Costa Rica yourself. I mean, seems like a big jump.
Yeah, and it was. And these jumps in my life, these jumps in our lives, they take some time, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things I began to realize was I didn't need to act on all these awarenesses day one. I didn't need to make all these profound shifts and changes. I fought some of them. Oh no, this isn't me. I would look at different friends I had in business and I go, no, that guy's truly like all about his business. That isn't me. Right.
Yeah.
And then I'd come back to it, like, no, that is me, So I think there was a bit of the, not wanting to let it all sink in, coming up with my own excuses.
Sure.
But taking some time just to sit with some of the realizations, not having to run out and act upon it. But, I had that experience and then I went back. I did it again. I wanted to go a little deeper. And I think through the process, I started to realize that I was making decisions that consciously I would make different decisions. And did I want my life to be defined by a business? And did I want my self-worth to come out of a company?
Yeah.
And I went through some ebbs and flows, like, oh God, that's the last thing I wanted. How, why did I let myself get into that? And, beat myself up for a couple of weeks. And then after kind of moving through that, I just came to a sense of, well, I can make a choice.
Sure.
Right? And it was through that awareness and taking some time with it that I made the choice to sell, which would have been my major business. When I had spent 25 years building, and I was just like, I think I'm going to let this go. Right. And not be defined by a business.
Did that feel like, from an emotional perspective, what I'm picking up is you took time to get to that decision, but did it feel just right, or did it feel terrifying? What was your state of mind? Okay.
Totally right. Totally terrifying. What was I doing? When you sell your business, like, it's not like that. If you change your mind in the morning, right?
Yeah, exactly. Just joking.
You're like, actually, a week later, I'd like to reverse this. It doesn't work that way, right?
Yeah.
So, terrified. Was I making the right decision? Is this really what I wanted to do? And sitting with it, taking the time, but ultimately, I think what led to more than anything was I did not want my personal self-worth to be so wrapped up in a business that was defining me to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you have any, Brad, do you have any outside of the medicine, did you have any kind of foundational tools that were helping you, like journaling practice or whatever?
Yeah, I started to meditate.
Okay.
And at first I really thought that meditation was a spiritual practice. I've since come to understand that for many it is a spiritual practice, and certainly for me in part it is, but that meditation can also play a profound role in changing literally helping us rewire some of our own, changing the brain.
Yeah.
So I would say meditation has been a foundational piece.
What's your practice look like?
Usually oftentimes I wake up in the middle of the night. Last night it was about 3:00 in the morning, and I'll just sit for half an hour, maybe upwards to an hour, deep in meditation, I find that when I'm coming out of a deep sleep, a lot of my mind has already slowed down. So just allow
Okay.
to really connect.
Like you're naturally waking up at that time?
Yeah. I go back to sleep afterwards, but I often
Interesting.
will wake up. I have a little puppy. She's learned to crawl up and nestle beside me, and I'll go into a bit deep meditation. It's for me, it's half dream state and half meditation. But I just
Yeah.
find it's a good time because I've disconnected from my day and I'm not up yet planning for the next part of it.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
then
Have you always done that? Is that because that's, I mean, a lot of people meditate, but it's the first I hear that the people that someone that's waking up naturally kind of middle of the night, going into deep meditation and then going back to sleep. It's quite unique. I like it.
yeah, I did. Yeah, I guess I didn't even realize it. Like that's just what happens for me, right?
Okay.
Yeah. I will meditate sometimes in the morning if I haven't had a chance. I just find that when I get up, my mind goes into, okay, my day mode, right?
Sure.
Where, 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, usually it's about 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm not into my day yet, right? I know I have this time to reflect and to meditate.
Okay.
Other times I'll do it mostly in the evening, take that time to reflect, usually 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I will set a timer and do a 20-minute meditation in the evening. I find meditation it's a tough one to keep the practice going,
Yeah.
but I find it really profoundly helpful, at least for me.
Okay. And do you have any kind of reflective practices, whether that's journaling or any other ways to just process or write out thoughts or navigate decisions?
I'm not a writer.
Okay.
So I would be that's not my thing from a writing
Yeah.
perspective. But I would say deep contemplation without trying to figure out the outcome now. Just okay, reflecting on it. What is it that I'm going through? What is it that I'm facing?
Yeah.
And maybe a little bit more of just letting those answers come a little bit more naturally.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's journaling though. Like, I mean, to me, the definition of journaling is just reflection. And especially if you're using questions and to stimulate the mind to think and whatnot.
Yeah.
How do you do it? Is it walks? Is it just naturally throughout the day? Is there any kind of practical rituals that you follow?
Yeah, I'd find I just have to take the time. Like, close it down. I'm going to spend 10 or 15 minutes just sitting here. Just, in the classic sense, it would be resting. When I had the last company, I had a couch in my office. I would lie down on it, Chesterfield, as Canadians would say. And I would think that I was just resting. But in hindsight, I was taking a few minutes to rest, obviously, but to contemplate and what I would now refer to as meditate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating to me because the more I study, I mean, people like yourself and those that are alive today, but then also look back at historical figures that, have been known to innovate or, shape our culture and society and whatnot. Like the fundamental practice or theme that continues to surface over and over again is they've all just found ways to still their mind and think. Often long walks, and just in contemplation, which doesn't link up well with how we started the conversation around how society is just set up to, big day. It was super productive. I had meetings all day. They were great meetings, but you had zero time to process anything.
Right. Because it just will go.
Yeah. And you wonder why our minds feel so at capacity and over capacity, frankly. I mean, those are the teams that I work with from the mental fitness front. It's just whenever I ask a team to just check in, one word, how does your mind feel right now? Without doubt, I can predict, these are the 5 words that are going to come up: stressed, overwhelmed, fearful, anxious, at capacity, racing. It's always something like that.
Yeah. Because that's the state both of us are in all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. And I don't say this I'm kind of just reporting, and because I fall into those states as well, is because if we don't do anything or if we don't have the practices, as soon as you and I step out, well, maybe not you, because you're in a little bit of a different environment. Let's say probably a bit of a more conducive environment for thinking and slowing down. Maybe not, because as soon as you hit social media or online, it's just the same stuff. We just get hit with all of this stuff.
And I think faster and faster and more intensely.
Yeah, totally.
Well, one of the things, Mark, that I've experienced with ayahuasca that I did not think was possible was a sense of peace. Like the first time I felt it, I was like, "Oh, this is what they mean when they say rest in peace." And you're gone. You've passed. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But like just this, wow, this is real peace. You know. So my experience with ayahuasca is it has shown me things and let me experience things that I would have not been able to, without that assistance. You know, just a profound sense of peace.
Yeah.
Not 24/7 by any means, but just to even be able to experience that throughout my life gives me something to go back to when I really wound up again.
Sure.
There's a place of peace that's available to us.
So how then, kind of continuing down your story and your path, seems like your many years of business experience and running companies and so forth and leading teams, you kind of merged in a way with the new direction around, obviously the potency of the experience that you had with ayahuasca and what I assume is the kind of the birthing of Reunion, which,
There's one big piece in that I'll touch on quickly that it really led to the change and the reason that I'm here at Reunion. One of the experiences that came up for me in an ayahuasca ceremony, I've always was aware I didn't like myself. Right? You would have said, if you would have said, "Do you like me, Brad?" I would have said, "Oh yeah, for sure. I love me." The typical answer, right?
Yeah.
But a close friend would say, "Do you like yourself?" And I would feel, safe enough or comfortable enough to say, "No, I don't." Right?
Yeah.
My wife would have known I don't like myself.
Yeah.
In sitting in ceremony one night with ayahuasca, I was like, you really don't like yourself. And I was like, yeah, I know. Like trying to almost, I didn't even want to hear it.
Yeah.
Right? And, I just sat with it and I was like, whew, like I really, really, really don't like myself. Like, I'm like, this is the first time I've ever felt true hate.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, wow. And it's me. It's reflected to me. At one point, I remember kind of catching my breath. It was so deep, it almost took my breath away. Right. And I remember in the medicine saying, well, I've done this personal work and I've sat with ayahuasca before. Like, how can I be experiencing this deep level of profound self-hatred? This mustn't all be true. Like all the stuff I've been working on must be for no reason. And then I understood, no, it's, I literally heard it, or like, another communication in the room. It's because you've done this work already, you can finally face this.
Oh,
and
wow.
For me, I knew from a very young age that I was gay. But growing up religiously, where you were going to hell, there was no space for this. I swore I would never be gay. I would never be a gay man, right? Got married, was married for 25 years. And really, really went deep into, an existence that I can't even say I was unhappy, right? Because I had a successful business and I was married to just an amazing, amazing woman, a beautiful extended family, like all those things that would suggest, happiness on the outside. And, I just sat with it in the medicine and I thought, well, if you want to live a life of more integrity and more authenticity, you can come out. And I was like, no, we're not going to do it.
Yeah. Maybe thought about that a little bit before, but no.
No, we're not going to do it. And, my experience with ayahuasca is, it doesn't force us to do something. It just showed me there's a possibility that if I wanted to live more in integrity, if I wanted to live more authentically, I could go this route.
Yeah.
Right?
Did you feel the weight of that though? To me, it must have been a weight because you knew this, but at the same time, like, I don't know, they felt probably trapped in a way.
Well, in my own experience, and I hear this often, is we bury these stories. We don't listen to our inner selves. We kind of just plow through life, right? We act in a certain way. We're working hard, we're drinking too much, or we're shopping too much, or whatever we're doing, okay, that really doesn't serve us, but at least it keeps us busy from going into those questions.
Yeah,
right?
That's a good point.
In my case, it was work, right?
Yeah.
I just, when I was working, I didn't have to deal with me or my stuff or who I was or my purpose and my, self.
Mm-hmm.
I was busy growing a company. And, I think that's why so much of my time went into that, because so much of it, Mark, I've reflected on this. I feel fortunate that I chose work to throw myself into this, because I think very easily it could have been alcohol or drugs or quite frankly, another addiction. Work is a tough one because it's validating. When you're successful, it kind of adds to this. Well, good for you.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think anyone would say if I would have been, an alcoholic, well, good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Glad to see you're dealing with this in a really positive way.
Yeah.
So for me, that's just how I dealt with it. So the medicine, sitting with ayahuasca, was really a sense of freedom. Again, choice. How did I want to live my life?
Mm-hmm.
And so, your question was, how did I go from where I was in a certain life to this? I was straight, if in quotes, married, CEO, a couple hundred employees. We were knocking it out of the park. Had some big business wins. Things were good. Now I founded a not-for-profit plant medicine center in Costa Rica. As an out gay man. I mean, not in my wildest dreams.
Yeah.
Like, not in my wildest dreams would have I seen that one coming. And the difference, here's the other thing I never would have realized, that I can honestly say I love and appreciate me and who I am.
Oh, that's big. Yeah, that's big.
Yeah.
Wow.
In 6 years, it's been a journey, I would say, to go from profound self-hatred to compassion, love, and understanding for me and who I am.
Yeah. Wow.
It actually chokes me up.
Yeah. Yeah. It would choke me up too. I mean, that's...
So that's the profound transformation that's available to people in this medicine. That's my version, of it with the coming out part. But that kind of transformation I see here on a weekly basis with people. Profound shifts in their life. What I particularly like about the practice of meditation is it's one of those practices that we can take home after a plant medicine experience, after a retreat week, to help, with the continual change. People come to places like Reunion not for a week off work, although that's what I thought I was going for. Most people come for a transformative experience to take their lives in the direction that they feel is possible for them, or that they would like us hopefully to be possible for them.
Yeah.
And once they experience that, meditation can be a really useful practice to help, with sustainable change.
Mm-hmm. Well, because that's where the tools come in, and we'll chat a little bit more about this after. Some of the listeners may know that I've been working on a series outside of this show, I may publish on this feed, but titled Demystifying Psychedelics. And this all came up because I kept getting asked from others in the psychedelics world, I guess you could say, saying, hey, do you ever bring in your mental fitness to help people kind of on their integration journey after they go through an experience? And I've never really thought about that. It just wasn't on my radar. But Brad, I'm not exaggerating. I want to say for 3 years nonstop, kept coming back over and over and over again to the point where I was really curious. And then of course you start seeing all these media headlines. I'm like, well, that's never usually the facts. Those are the, the glorified versions of how they're talking about something. So wanted to start to ask some questions around like, what's really happening here, and what's the history, and you're like, where do these medicines come from? And then starting to realize that the medicine is obviously important, but in the grand scheme of things, I mean, it's just a small fraction of when you look at all of the wisdom transfer and the rituals and the traditions for thousands of years. Like, it's just mind blowing. Right. And so we're still working on this series, which, like I said, I definitely want to talk to you about it a little bit more offline. But I just realized that there are just so many different tools for us out there. And it's just, let's just be open and ask good questions, right? And go into these experiences with some insight or some intention and some knowledge, but to be open, right?
And we're letting people know, Mark, the possibility is there. I think become so narrow in our busy lives that we don't know that there's other options out there. We don't know that there's an opportunity to live a happier and more fulfilled life. Like, never dawned on me to even ask the question. I mean, we're not taught to sit back at the end of a hard day and go, am I really happy with where I'm going here? Usually I was too exhausted, going home, eat, go to bed, get up and do it again. Yeah. Very little time for reflection.
Well, and what's interesting is I love these conversations. This always happens. And whenever it does, I get tingles in my body, because we're basically going full circle to how you answered the opening question of who are you and the work that you do around coming home. Because when I hear some of the words that you just said, it's not like we're born with all of this distraction and like all these questions around happiness and whatnot. I mean, if you look at any kids, it's, I've got 2 young boys. They're the happiest little people in the no care in the world, just curious, trying things. And it's just as we, go into life, like we kind of, we mute all of that and then get to this place typically in our journey of, oh shit, well, there's got to be more than this. And then we try to go back, to that world. And then obviously, it's wild.
Well, one of kind of the ethoses of reunion, we have a number. One is there's no one path, right?
Sure.
So like the path that I'm on is the path that you're on. So what we do here is really support the path that the guest is on. Right?
Okay.
We're not here to lead you a certain way or to lead a guest in a certain direction. Some people will say, I'm a Buddhist. I'm a Buddhist. Others, I'm an atheist. And whatever your path is, that support that. The other belief that we operate from, where we come from, and say an ethos, is that as individuals, we're not broken. Right? So, the shaman I work with said to me 6 years ago, Brad, you're not broken. In my head thought was, well, then you don't know me very well.
Yeah.
Okay. And I had to really sit with, when did I become broken? You talk about your boys. They're not broken. No one would look at them and say, these are broken humans, right? Yeah. But somewhere through the piece, many of us pick up this story that we're broken and we have things to fix. We're damaged.
Yeah.
How many times have you heard people say, I'm damaged goods?
Yeah.
Right? I've been damaged either by things that have happened to me or my own stories. So for a big part of, I think, what plant medicine has done, and certainly what the ethos of reunion is, starting from the premises that you're not broken. The soul, you at the core, is not broken. Right? In my case, I had picked up a lot of stories.
Yeah.
I heard a lot of stories. I was repeating a lot of stories to myself. So I think it's more about letting this stuff go than actually fixing. In essence, by letting it go is the fix.
Totally.
Right.
Totally. Which is getting back to that original state.
And that's the name reunion. That's why we
Okay.
call it reunion. It's
Yeah.
about reuniting with
Yeah.
who we are, coming back to that, be just like talking to that man boy,
Yeah.
30 years from now, and being able to show him what a beautiful individual he was when he was 5,
Yeah.
you know, and really making it clear you didn't get broken somewhere along the piece. You may do a lot of things differently, and you may say a lot of things differently had you been able to do it over, but that doesn't make us broken,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So I love the concept of mental fitness because that doesn't suggest that I'm broken. That suggests, hey, I can be more fit. I could be in a
Yeah.
better state than where I feel right now.
Yeah.
And for
Yeah.
me, being in a better state than where I was, and I think it's an ongoing journey. So I would never, describe me as I'm there or I've somehow arrived. I only look at where I am now versus where I was. And compared to where I was and how I felt about myself, I've certainly arrived in a tremendously better spot for me,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's that, I'm coming home to me, and I believe that that's the real journey,
Yeah.
coming home to ourselves,
Powerful.
reuniting with who we are. A big part of what we do here too is we do psychedelics, we do ayahuasca, in community. There's a lot of, psychedelic assisted therapy and Dr. Clay, and it's all beautiful and very relevant. What we do here is in community. So, in the traditional indigenous way, healing was done in community. What we've also seen is when you can come back and be more reunited with yourself, it also allows us to be more connected and reunited with others.
Yeah, which is so needed
Which is
now
so
more than ever.
now more than ever. We see weeks after weeks of guests living here, and they become like the deepest friends and companions because, when you're on a journey of coming home and you're with someone else who's on that same journey, that's a powerful community.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that was part of the whole, like I said, shared with the reason of starting this other or asking questions around this other series was you see all these media headlines around, these quick fixes and like, there's so many I'm sure you've seen them as well. It's like, resolve 50 years of trauma in 20 minutes kind of thing, which is, this is crazy. And what I've learned and I've heard over and over again from the co-host that I have on this series, Paul, who studies. He's in the process of I think he's just about there to getting his PhD in plant medicine, and has embedded and studied for over a decade within different tribes and whatnot. And what he's always shared, he's like, Mark, when these tribes go through their ceremony, they go into the ceremony together as a community, and then they stay together as a community, and like that's a huge missing part of what's happening kind of in I'm hesitant to say modern Western world, because the other thing I hear is a lot of these tribes and cultures think of us as their little brothers, like we're less advanced actually, in terms of what we call technology and their insights and so forth. It's just been so fascinating to learn and whatnot. But going back to your point around community, it's just so important, right? Like we are not alone. We didn't evolve alone either. Like that's the whole thing.
And we don't have to be alone.
Yes.
Right. What we do here at Reunion is we really blend the traditional indigenous lineages, that deep wisdom and learning, okay, and realizing that most of our guests are from the Western world, right?
Yeah.
So there's a real deep, growing understanding of neuroscience and how the brain works, right? So being able to understand how our brain works and how these powerful plant medicines help to rewire the brain, combining with the traditions of the indigenous cultures, such as community, deep respect for doing this work, bringing those together has been really transformative.
Yeah.
And so I've gone from, selling a product where, we make good money for sure. to enough profit where it's not about the money,
Yeah.
and feeling like more like I have a purpose and more like I have a reason to get up in the morning than I ever did before.
Oh, it's incredible. I'm going to start wrapping up, just conscious of time. The question that comes to mind is, do you feel, I often think of like our lives as a book, and that we're in different chapters and so forth, and that we all have the power to write the next chapter as well. But do you feel like you're in the same book or an entirely different book at this point? And I guess, if regardless of your answer, what's the next chapter title for you?
Yeah, it's definitely an entire different chapter. It's not.
Yeah. That's for sure. It's not just a paragraph shift.
Yeah. I think the next chapter would, my name's Brad Wells. So my initial is B Wells. So be well. Said that to me once, right? So I think if I were to name my next chapter, it would just be well. Just be. Maybe just be.
Yeah.
Like, what does the striving get us? Just being able to be who we are, coming home to ourselves. So I used to have these chapters I wanted to write: the next business, the next level of success, the other more things I would buy at some point. And it's just not the same level of importance that it was before. I used to think, Mark, that people who said money doesn't matter were people who didn't have any money.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like, you're sure, that's why you're saying that. And then I went out and made so much of my life devoted to making money, right? And then sit back and go, damn, money doesn't, although I appreciate having it, I need to open Reunion and has provided things, but in the whole sense of what it did for me, it didn't really matter.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's interesting, like when you, to your point, when we be, that's when the next chapter titled actually surfaces, and it doesn't have to. It's not this planned thing, and ironically, like even everyone listening, myself included, if you look back, if you just do a quick audit of your life up to this date, and you look at some of the things you're most proud of, or what you may be working on, or the big projects that are exciting you, they're typically not things that you've planned.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. This idea of goal setting and, hard driving and measuring everything. I mean, I spent years of my life in that. And with a measure of success, because driving ourselves does produce results. You put in 7 days a week, 10 hours a day, it's going to happen. Right.
Yeah.
So I think the difference now is what we suggested in an ayahuasca ceremony is to set an intention. Where would I like to go with this ceremony, and then to let it go? So where would I like to go with my life, but not be so hooked on that nothing else can come. Just letting it go.
Mm-hmm. This was beautiful, Brad, and I have a funny feeling that we are going to see each other on another series quite soon to go even deeper on the topic. But in the meantime, if people are interested in learning more about you and, of course, Reunion, where's the best place we can point everyone?
Yeah, our website for sure, reunionexperience.org.
Yeah.
You're in Costa Rica.
It's beautiful. It's right on the water as well, right?
Yeah, we're a beautiful location. We've close to 40 acres right on the coast, right on the beach. So it's just an amazing part of the country.
Incredible. Well, I want to thank you for coming on and of course taking the time to guest on the show, but also give a higher thank you for you following the messages and those intuitive nudges, and going through with a ceremony that initially wasn't planned and something you didn't want to do, because I feel like a lot of that and a lot of your willingness to follow and trust has helped a lot of other people as a ripple effect to, the work that you're doing, the conversation we're having right now, and there's many listening on the other side, to, of course, everyone that gets to experience Reunion. I mean, it's a beautiful it's a beautiful thing. So thank you for your energy and your work.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for helping us get the word out. We're here.